What makes an ordinary person do something extraordinary? What makes a quiet, soft-spoken child step into danger for someone else? What makes a nurse walk into a collapsing hospital, not because she has to, but because she refuses to leave anyone behind? What makes a man with shaking hands stand between his child and a loaded gun? It's not strength. It's not training. It's not fearlessness. It's something else. And maybe that something is the most powerful force a human can hold. So I ask you again, what makes someone brave when everything in them is afraid? A little boy runs into a burning house because his baby sister is still inside. His hands are too small. His lungs are too fragile. But he doesn't stop. A nurse, exhausted, overwhelmed, steps back into a room full of coughing, dying patients, while others run for safety. She's not a superhero, but her heart says, I can't leave them. A father stands between his child and danger. He has no weapon, no backup, but he spreads his arms wide and says, you will go through me first. None of these people planned to be brave. None of them woke up thinking, today, I will become a hero. But when the moment came, they moved. Not because they were fearless, but because something mattered more than fear. They didn't carry swords. They weren't trained for combat. They weren't the fastest, the strongest, or the loudest in the room. But in that moment, they were braver than any soldier in uniform, because they had something most warriors spend their whole lives searching for. A reason to stand, a reason to fight, a reason to say, I don't care how scared I am, I won't let this happen. And sometimes, that reason, that one thing you love too much to lose, can be more powerful than any weapon ever made. We grow up believing that bravery belongs to the strong, to the fast, the fierce, the ones who never flinch. We associate courage with muscle, weapons, power, as if it were something you could hold in your hands, or wear like armor. But the truth is, many who carry weapons still run away. Many who appear powerful still hesitate when it matters most. Because courage doesn't begin in your fists. It doesn't live in your voice, or your stature, or your skill. It begins with your why. And without a reason, even the strongest will eventually fall back. But with the right reason, even the quietest person can rise. You don't need a weapon to be brave. You need a reason. Read that again. Let it settle in your bones. Because we've been taught to admire the armed, the loud, the ones who walk into the room with force. But real bravery, it often enters quietly, on trembling legs, with eyes full of tears, and a heart that says, I won't let fear stop me. Not this time. Not when this matters. This quote strips bravery down to its essence. It reminds us that courage isn't something you pick up. It's something that wakes up when your reason becomes bigger than your fear. Bravery doesn't begin in the hand. It begins in the heart. You don't have to be trained. You don't have to be fearless. You don't have to be ready. You just have to have something worth standing up for. Something you love. Something you refuse to lose. Something that whispers to you, even when you're terrified, this is bigger than you, and you can't walk away. And in that moment, your fear may still be there, but it won't be in control. Because when your reason is clear, your courage becomes louder than your fear. And that is what makes you unstoppable. You don't need a sword to protect someone. You don't need a shield to defend what's right. You don't need a title, a badge, or approval. You just need a reason. Courage doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask, "Am I ready?" It simply responds. When someone you love is at risk, you don't stop to check if you're qualified. You move. When injustice unfolds in front of you, you don't need an audience to validate your anger. You speak. Because real courage is born not from what you carry in your hands, but what burns inside your chest. You can be terrified. You can be trembling. And you can still choose to act. That's courage. And it belongs to anyone who has something worth protecting. A reason is not just motivation. It's a sacred engine. It's the force that takes fear by the throat and says, "Move." You won't run if your mother is behind you. You won't freeze if your little sister is being dragged into danger. You won't stay silent if the one being humiliated is your own child. Because suddenly, the fear is still there, but it is no longer the loudest voice in the room. A reason makes you forget your limits. It makes you reach deeper than your pain. It creates strength you didn't know existed. It may not be logical. It may not even be safe. But it is pure. Because when what's at stake is someone you love, or something you believe in, you stop negotiating with fear. You act. You protect. You stand. Because you must. We need to let go of the myth that bravery is loud, unshaken, and fearless. Because the truth? Courage is trembling hands that don't drop the shield. It's a shaking voice that still speaks. It's knees buckling under pressure, but feet still stepping forward. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is fearfully present, with you choosing to move anyway. And why? Because there is something you believe in, more than your comfort, more than your safety, more than your fear. That's not recklessness. That's not pride. That's what happens when your heart refuses to walk away. So no, you don't need to be strong to be brave. You just need a reason you can't bear to ignore. Story number 1. The 11-year-old who faced a home intruder. It was just after midnight. The house was quiet. Her parents had gone out briefly. Only she and her 6-year-old brother were home, sleeping, until a sound shattered the silence. Glass breaking. A window forced open. Footsteps that didn't belong. Most 11-year-olds would scream, or hide, or freeze in terror. She felt all those instincts. Her hands trembled. Her chest tightened. Her legs wanted to collapse. But then, she looked at her brother, still asleep, completely unaware of the danger, and something inside her shifted. She didn't grab a weapon. She didn't make a scene. She picked up her phone, locked the bedroom door, gently pulled her brother to the corner behind the bed, and called 911 in a whisper. She stayed on the line. She gave their address. And when the dispatcher told her to stay hidden, she said, "I'm standing in front of the door. If he gets in, I want to be between him and my brother." By the time police arrived, the intruder had tried the doorknob, but she stood firm, shaking, crying silently, but unmoved. When the officers entered and carried her brother out, she didn't collapse. She just whispered, "I didn't know what else to do, but I couldn't let him get to my brother." That night, a child with no weapon, no training, and no plan did the bravest thing imaginable because she had a reason, and that was enough. Story number 2. The school janitor who saved 30 children. It started with smoke, a faint smell, then shouting, then panic. A fire had broken out in the elementary school's main wing. The flames spread quickly, faster than anyone expected. The hallway filled with thick black smoke. Teachers were evacuating students. Parents were arriving. Screams echoed. Chaos ruled. And in the middle of it all, a 59-year-old janitor named Mr. Dan. He could have left. No one would have blamed him. He wasn't trained for rescue. He wasn't wearing protective gear. He was almost 60, but he heard crying coming from a locked classroom. The teacher had collapsed outside, unable to return for the children inside. Without a second thought, Mr. Dan ran toward the fire. His eyes stung, his lungs burned, but he reached the door, kicked it open, and began carrying children out one by one. Some he held in his arms, some he guided by the hand, some he pushed toward safety and turned back for more. He went in and out 4 times, before finally collapsing himself. Suffering burns to his hands and smoke inhalation. Every child in that wing survived. When a reporter asked why he didn't just wait for help, he said, "Because by the time help came, it would have been too late. I could die, but I couldn't let those kids be left behind." That's not heroism out of training. That's not strength out of status. That's courage born from a reason, from love, from humanity, from a man who chose not to run. Story number 3, the single mother who faced the monster. She was alone. No partner, no legal team, no safety net, just her and her 7-year-old daughter. For weeks, the child had grown quieter, jumped at loud noises, flinched when touched, drew pictures no child should draw. And then one night, the little girl whispered a name, a friend of a family friend, someone who should have never been near her. The mother's world shattered. She had no money, no influence. The man was respected in the community. People warned her, "Don't stir things up. You'll only make it worse." But she didn't care about whispers. She cared about her daughter. She took her to a doctor, filed a police report, faced threats, was labeled a liar, an attention seeker, a troublemaker. She stood alone in court, shaking hands, dry mouth, but unwavering. The trial took a year of questions, blame, isolation. Even friends turned away. But she never did. And one day, justice came. The man was convicted. Her daughter finally could sleep without nightmares. When someone asked how she found the strength to do it, she said, "I wasn't strong. I was terrified every day. But if I stayed quiet, I'd be a traitor to my own child." She didn't have a weapon. She didn't have protection. But she had a reason, and that made her unshakable. Maybe you're not the smartest person in the room. Maybe you're not the strongest. Maybe you don't feel like you were made for greatness. But none of that matters. Because if you have a reason so deep it shakes you, so real it won't let you sit still, so personal, it breaks your heart to ignore, then you are stronger than you think. You don't need the spotlight. You don't need permission. You don't need to feel ready. All you need is why. Why you'll speak when silence is safer. Why you'll stand when hiding is easier. Why you'll fight, even when you're tired, outnumbered, and scared. That reason, whatever it is where your bravery lives. Not in your muscles, not in your plans, but in your willingness to step forward. When something truly matters, find the thing you can't walk away from. The person, the belief, the truth that pulls you forward when fear tries to hold you back. It might be your child, your values, your faith, your sense of justice, or simply the person you promised you'd become. You don't need to roar. You don't need to win every battle. You just need to show up again and again for the thing you love more than your comfort. That's where courage begins. And when the moment comes, when you're afraid, uncertain, unprepared, but you still move? That's when you'll realize. Even now, maybe you're still waiting to feel ready. You never needed a weapon. You only ever needed a reason. If you've ever been brave, not because you felt powerful, but because you had no choice but to protect what mattered. If you've ever stood your ground, not with strength, but with purpose, then you already know. Courage isn't what you carry in your hands, it's what you carry in your heart. If this story reminded you of your own why, the thing that gets you back up when you're afraid, leave a BA or BA in the comments. For the mission you won't give up. For the love that keeps you moving. Not for applause, but as a quiet reminder. I know what I'm fighting for. And if this message found you in the middle of your own battle, stay with us. Subscribe to USM Soldier's Memory. Here, we honor the silent warriors, those who don't wear armor, but who still show up every day. Next time, I'll tell you another story about someone just like you, someone who stood up, not because they weren't scared, but because they had a reason they couldn't walk away from. Until then, hold on to your reason. It may be quiet, but it's braver than you think.